Welcome back to another installment of our most anticipated books of the year, actually worth the wait. Last time we had a mixed bag. I have high hopes for this video. Our first victim is The Goddess of the River by Vaishnavi Patel. I read Kai by this author and it was a 5-star favorite. I think this made my top 10 of the year. Goddess of the River is a retelling of the river goddess Ganga's story, and it's already fantastic, you guys. I am maybe 20%, 30% of the way into it. I love it so much. I immediately, as soon as I started reading it, I was just transported back to this. I think Vaishnavi Patel has a really clear voice as an author. I think her writing is really recognizable, and I was just so excited to dive into another one of her stories. Goddess of the River starts out with some pretty big content warnings. There is a lot of infanticide in this story, and the author lets you know about what's happening and why it's happening before you get into the story itself. So for readers who aren't familiar with the original text, you can kind of understand the story from a macro level before getting into this really micro story about this one individual and why she makes these decisions and why this is something that the author chose to keep in the story. And so I'm gonna spoil a little bit of the original story. If you don't want to go into this book knowing anything about that, I would suggest that you skip the introduction, and I would suggest that you skip this portion of the video, but it is the author's intent that you know this before you read the book. So the setup of this story is that we have this river goddess Ganga, and she is a river on earth. She is this goddess, but she has come down to earth and she is now this river. There are these godlings who play along her shores. She really feels like a mother to them. They are both immortal and they're going about their immortal lives. And then this human ends up cursing Ganga and the godlings. So the godlings are cursed to live mortal lives and Ganga is cursed to be their mother. What ends up happening is that she gives birth to all 8 of these godlings in order to restore them to their immortal states and save them from this curse. Basically, she kills her babies, and it is not something that she does easily. It is not something that she feels good about doing. It is something that she struggles with, and it is pretty horrifying to read about. I just want you to know that that is what is happening in the beginning of this story. So that is the setup. Ganga has lived a mortal life. She has had these children. She's interacted with mortals. She's had this husband, and now 30% of the way into the story, I feel like we've kind of done everything that I thought the book was gonna do. And so now I have absolutely no idea what's about to happen. I believe what we're gonna be doing is following kind of a similar story to Kai in which we're following both this mother and this son because she does have one surviving son. I don't know. I don't really know where we're going. I know very little about this original text, so I'm really excited to learn about it through Vaishnavi Patel's writing. I absolutely love a retelling, so I'm really excited to get more of the way into this, and I will see you guys when I have either something interesting to say, I guess. Maybe it'll be when the book is finished, maybe it'll be in 20 pages. I don't know. I'll see you then. Alright, I have finished reading Goddess of the River and I really loved this. I don't think I quite loved it as much as Kai. The only reason why I loved this less than Kai, I think, is because I got a little confused in the middle there. I was with it, I was super excited about the beginning, and then we had this story covers a lot of time and it's a condensed version of an epic story. And so there's a lot of different characters and there's a lot of time passing. And I personally just got a little bit confused in the middle, but we came back at the end. I love the conversations in here about what it is to do the right thing and how sometimes our mission and our goal to do the right thing can actually put us in a situation where we're not doing the right thing. So there's a character in here who never goes against his word, even when going against his word would be ethically the right thing to do, and just like the ramifications of all of that. It's very, very interesting. There's a lot of conversations about belief and religion in here. And at the end of the story, we have an afterword that is just so poignant. My favorite thing is that Vaishnavi Patel tells us there are no good answers to be found in this book, but hopefully there are good questions. And that's exactly how I feel about this. It got my mind thinking about a lot of different things, about my opinions about things. It's one of those stories where you are both getting really connected to characters and really understanding their motivations, and also just kind of like letting the tale wash over you and thinking about how it applies to your life and your decisions that you make. I just had a really fantastic time with this. I think I'm gonna land at about a 4-star on it. Would highly, highly recommend picking it up. It had a lot of really interesting questions to ask. So now we start our second book, which is going to be Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. My coconut linings have come in. If you watched my summer reset, they have finally arrived, and I want to go plant flowers in my window boxes outside. So I'm going to put the audiobook of Middle of the Night on, and we're going to go do this. Let me tell you a little bit about it. So we have finally a male main character from Riley Sager. We're following him in present day. 30 years ago, his best friend, they were camping in his backyard, and someone cut open the tent and took his friend. And 30 years later, we don't know what happened to him. He's still missing. Our main character doesn't remember anything, didn't wake up when this boy was taken, and now he's moved back into his childhood home. He's still obsessed with this story and is trying to figure out what happened in the middle of the night 30 years ago. So really excited to see what this is going to be about. Let's go plant some flowers while we listen to the audiobook. Plants have been planted. We'll have to check in on them to see if they sprout before this video is over. Hopefully they do. I have started reading Middle of the Night by Riley Sager, but before we talk about that, I need to tell you about the sushi that I had last night. We went to Yamazaru. I don't really like sushi, and I found out it's because I don't like seaweed. I feel like everyone was eating seaweed a couple years ago, and I was like, yeah, this sounds great. Let me crunch that. And I hated it. And so I think that's why I didn't like sushi, because I do like fish, but I didn't like the seaweed aspect of the sushi. So my friend told me that this place, you can get soy paper instead of seaweed. It's wrapped in soy paper. Oh my gosh, it was so good. I am so happy that I can finally be a cool girl who likes sushi, because I was trying so hard and I just really hate the taste of seaweed. So if that's you, a lot of places will do soy paper instead of seaweed, which is very, very exciting. Anyways, I have started reading Middle of the Night. I'm actually almost halfway through, and I'm loving it. I'm really, really loving it. It's kind of giving Written by a Boy, which is classic for Riley Sager, but other than some weird babysitter dynamics, there's a lot going on that I'm really enjoying. So obviously Billy was taken 30 years ago, and so we're trying to figure out what happened. There's been some updates to the case that we find out in the first half of the book, and now it's starting to get a little bit strange, and I'm really wondering if it's gonna get paranormal, because I feel like Riley Sager, a lot of his books tease paranormal, but now that he's done paranormal once, I feel like it's extra suspenseful, because I feel like he could go there again, and I really am feeling like this might go there. So I'm really excited to find out what's gonna go on, if it's gonna be paranormal, if it's not gonna be paranormal. We're trying to figure out what happened to Billy. We're trying to figure out what happened the night he disappeared. We're also just like really insulated in this little suburban community and getting to know all these characters 30 years ago and today. I'm loving it. I will let you guys know when I finish it how it all went. Hello friends, a lot has happened since we last spoke. One of them being that my very best friend here in Charlotte has moved. She's going to get her MBA, so please tell her in the comments how proud we are of her, because I'm so excited to see what she does in this next phase of life. But Trista, I miss you so much. I have finished reading Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I actually finished it a while ago. I think I'm gonna give this a 4. because looking back on it, it was very entertaining. I loved being in the book while I was reading it. I don't think I was ever super excited to pick it up, but once I was reading it, I was never like distracted or rolling my eyes or like wanting to put it down. I was always engaged once I was doing the actual reading. I did really like the way that the twists went, the dynamics of the people in the small town. It just got a little bit annoying in my personal opinion, but that's just what you're gonna get out of one of these stories. So I can't really complain. I knew that's what was gonna happen. I was shocked a couple of times. I always wanted to know what was gonna happen next. I felt really connected to all of our characters. There's a little boy in here who is very endearing and I just wanna give him a hug. I did not guess whodunit. I was very surprised. I thought it was really well done. I still think The House Across the Lake is my favorite Riley Sager, and that's probably important information for you to have because most people hated that one. So you can decide if you want to trust my review of this one. I think overall, big success. I'm going to continue reading from Riley Sager. I definitely like this more than It's Not Here Because My Friends Borrowed It. The only one left, I liked this one, I think, more than that one. That one got a little bit too silly and I was just rolling my eyes at the end of it. So overall, I think we've had 2 wins. The next book we are going to read is I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I cannot even explain to you how excited I am to read this because my favorite horror book of all time, maybe tied with House of Leaves, is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. And I'm really excited that he's writing something else in the slasher genre. So I believe we are following a man who was a killer in his teens, a teenage slasher, if you will. I don't really know any more than that other than that this is supposed to be kind of like turning all of the horror tropes on their head. So I'm excited to see what that means. We're also going to a new restaurant tonight called Maria. So when I'm back, I will give you a review of that and the beginning of this book. I have updates for you. Maria, I still don't know how to pronounce it. I'm so sorry. It was really good. The food was absolutely incredible. But then they did this thing and I want to know if you guys have ever had this happen to you at a restaurant because it was feeling very Disneyland to me. We got there, we're eating, and then someone comes around with like a big like flash camera and takes a picture of us. And we thought it was like for their Instagram or something. So we asked like, oh, like where's the picture going? They're like, oh, it's a private photo. Like 10, 20 minutes later, they bring around a photo in a frame and ask us if we want to buy it. I don't know, it's just like very odd. I feel like I've never had that happen outside of Disney, where they take a picture of you and then you can buy it. Anyways, that was interesting. I can't say I liked it. We are now obviously not in my house. We are in a hotel room. Dan has a fight this weekend, hopefully. His last fight ever. For those of you who don't know, Dan is an amateur boxer and this fight has been a long time coming. He was supposed to fight in October. We had like 2 false starts in October, but it's finally happening today. I am incredibly nervous. I'm very proud of him for doing a hard thing. I just wish that that hard thing didn't involve him getting brain damage, but he's gonna win his fight today and then we're gonna be done, and that's gonna be that. Let's talk about I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I am 34% of the way into this and I love it. I love it so much. I feel like My Heart is a Chainsaw was really a reinvention, an evolution of the slasher genre, and I feel the same way about I Was a Teenage Slasher. I don't want to stop reading this book. I only have the audiobook from Libro FM, and I really just want the physical copy as well so I can keep reading this while Dan's at his fight, because I think we're going to be there for a couple of hours just like waiting for his to happen. He's at weigh-ins right now. So he should be back here soon, and then we'll go get breakfast, and then, I don't know, I guess the fight starts at 4. We'll hang out until then. Can you tell I'm stressed about this? Anyways, this book is so good. So I don't know how much I want to tell you because I went into it knowing nothing and I'm really enjoying just like figuring it out. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you too much about what is going on in here. So our main character is the slasher and he is telling us the story of what happened. And so in the beginning he tells us that he kills 6 kids, and then we're kind of like following the sequence of events that leads up to that. And the claim in the beginning of it is that he kills 6 kids because he has a peanut allergy. It's silly, it's absurd, it's so Stephen Graham Jones, and I'm loving the crap out of it. The synopsis also says that we will find ourselves rooting for the slasher, and I think that is already happening. He is a slasher, but he's a little bit different than other slashers. He's more of a reluctant slasher, if that makes sense. I love it so much. I already feel so connected to our main character and all of his family and all of his friends. And these side characters, we know who our final girl is already. It's just so well done, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Okay, I'm gonna distract myself by reading more of this book, so I will see you guys later. Hello, my loves, we are done. The fight is completed. Dan did not win, but we're done. We're done with boxing forever. I'm so happy that we are done. For those of you who are curious, I'm gonna give you a little rundown of what happened, but if you'd like to skip the boxing content, I don't blame you. I myself wish that I could have skipped this phase of our lives. So if you'd like to skip over this, I'm gonna leave timestamps because I've also finished reading I Was a Teenage Slasher and I loved it, and I'm excited to tell you about it. But first, let me word vomit about boxing. So this was Dan's second fight. I'd never seen him fight before. His original plan was to keep going until he won a fight, and kind of the deal that we made when we started dating and I told him how much I hated this was that he'd do one more fight and win or lose, he'd be done. And this was that fight. So we thought that the guy that he was fighting, so they match you up based on weight and I guess how many fights you've had. So Dan has had one fight before, so this is his second fight. So he should only be fighting people who have 0 to 3 fights. And this guy's record said that he'd had 0 fights. So we thought he'd never fought before. Turns out he's been boxing since he was 13, but he hasn't had a fight since he's been an adult. And your record when you're under 18 just gets wiped from your record when you become an adult. So he was a lot better than we thought he was. Dan fought really, really well. I was sitting with his friends from his gym. They all thought that he won. His coaches thought that he won. Apparently it was a split decision, but they gave it to the other guy. And let me tell you, I knew that boxing was fighting, but I don't think I quite realized how horrifying it was gonna be. I've gone to fights with Dan before just to like prepare myself for watching this person that I love get punched in the head. Nothing could have ever prepared me for how Dan was after his fight. I was totally cool and calm and collected up until he fought, felt fine while he was fighting. When he came out of his fight, he left everything out there. Like he had nothing left in the tank and he was so exhausted, and you're getting punched in the head for 6 minutes. So he's concussed. Just like looking at him and seeing like lights on, nobody's home. Like he threw up after, he said the lights hurt, he was having a hard time speaking. It was horrifying. And I am so glad that we are done. The energy in that gym was so weird because you get there and it feels like a regular sporting event. Like there's kids there, they have kids and adults fighting at the same time. And it really feels like you're just going to a basketball game. There's a concession stand. Everyone's just kind of hanging out. People are doing jump rope, they're warming up. And then as the day progresses and we go from people with less fights to people with more fights, the energy changed a little bit. And you realize like, oh, his coach is putting Vaseline in his nose so that if the guy punches him in the nose and his nose starts bleeding everywhere, that the blood won't get everywhere and slow him down when he's fighting. And that is just not something that you want to ever realize. So anyways, I'm going to play a short clip here of his fight. Once again, if you don't want to see that, timestamp below. This is what that looks like in case you're curious. I am really, really proud of him for doing a really hard thing. And I am also incredibly proud of him for stopping boxing because I really do not want him to get brain damage. And this is not a sport that you can do for a long time without getting brain damage. So I am very happy that we are done. I have also finished reading I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, and it is 5 stars. I loved this book so much. It is, once again, a love letter to the slasher genre, and it really is unlike any slasher story you've ever heard before. I feel like there are times when I've been in the head of the killer in books, movies, TV shows. You kind of humanize them a little bit, but it's mostly like, okay, this person, maybe what they're doing is justified in the slasher. They seem to always be justified. But they're still killing people, and I still don't like that. Whereas in this one, the way that this slasher origin story happens, he doesn't want to be killing people. And so you're just kind of along for the ride with him, trying to figure out what the rules are of the slasher genre and the slasher that he has become. And his final girl is changing as well and coming into her own. It was just so well done. I think Stephen Graham Jones really understands what it's like to be 17, 18 years old and really just writes that character so well. I loved the beginning of this story. I loved the middle of this story. I loved the way that it ended. It was absolutely incredible. And now I'm comparing it to My Heart is a Chainsaw, and I can't tell you which one I like better. So this is now, I guess, one of my favorite horror books of all time. I really don't want to give you that much more information about this because I went into it not knowing a lot, and I want that experience for you as well. I will just say this feeling of our two main characters against the idea of a slasher while they're in a slasher was just an incredibly cool concept. It had some lighthearted moments, there's some humor in here, there's some really typical 17, 18-year-old kid stuff, and it's an incredible slasher, and it's an anti-slasher. It was just perfect. And the perfect end to this video. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I feel like we read 3 amazing books, one of them being one of my new favorite books. My top 10 this year is gonna be incredibly difficult to pin down because although I feel like I've given out a lot more 2 stars than I typically do in a year, the 5 stars have been absolutely amazing. So I guess we answered the question, are my most anticipated books really worth the wait? And in this case, they definitely are. I feel like each of these books lived up to the hype that I had created in my brain about them. And that is all that I could ask for, is to not be disappointed by a book. So super thrilled that this went so well. I would love to hear in the comments what your biggest disappointment was of your most anticipated books of this year so far, and then the one that really knocked it out of the park and exceeded all of your expectations. All right, that's gonna be it for me. If you're new here, I would love for you to subscribe. Otherwise, I will see you all next week. Bye.